Thanks, Maya, for getting us all set up. And hello, everyone. It's great to see your messages come through in the chat telling us where you're dialing in from today. But a very, very warm welcome to our Ignite local connection for Australia and New Zealand. By way of introduction, I'm Prerita, currently working as the go-to-market lead for Azure Artificial Intelligence across ANZ, and I'm super excited to be your host for our session today. Before we kick off, I would like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land from where I'm presenting today, the Camaragal people of the Eora Nation. I'd like to recognise their care and custodianship of this land and recognise their ongoing connection to land, waters and community. I'd also like to extend my respects to them, their culture and to elders past, present and emerging. I also want to acknowledge our audience in New Zealand. Kia ora, everyone. I acknowledge the Maori people for their guardianship of the land and recognise their elders and leaders, both present and emerging. In our local connection session today, we'll be bringing a customer story to life that really illustrates what's possible with our holistic platform in Australia and New Zealand. And we are so thrilled to be joined today by National Australia Bank. NAB was seeking a faster and more consistent way to handle tech support requests from its 35,000 plus workforce. Using Microsoft's Azure Cognitive Services and bot framework, part of our artificial intelligence portfolio, the bank created a unique chatbot that has significantly improved employee productivity, reduced costs, and enabled a better customer experience. In the first 7 months since deployment, NAB has seen a strong uptake of the chatbot that has enabled the organisation to save a whopping $1.2 million in support team costs thus far. The key Ignite theme that this story really aligns to is to deliver efficiency with automation and AI across your business. You'll learn a little more about how NAB has been able to apply AI and automation to streamline business processes, enhance collaboration, and improve customer and employee experiences. Another key call out is that in today's complex environment, organizations are looking for strong, comprehensive, and simplified security that helps them do more with less. The secondary theme that you'll notice through this story is protect everything, everyone, everywhere with comprehensive security. What makes the NAB chatbot so unique was their approach to security throughout this entire project. Being one of the few large enterprises in the world to deploy Azure Cognitive Services using private endpoints, which you'll learn more about in just a moment. Another exciting element of this story is that it extends beyond NAB, leveraging Azure Cognitive Services and bot framework, with the next evolution of this project extending out to leverage Microsoft's Power Platform, specifically Power Virtual Agents, to enhance capabilities and expand to other areas of the business, highlighting the integration between our products and services and the power of the holistic Microsoft platform. I hope you're all really excited from this little preview because we have an incredible lineup of speakers today. Raj, who will dive into NAB's journey and their learnings through deploying their employee chatbot. Lewis, who will delve into Microsoft's range of Azure Artificial Intelligence services. And Ben, who will shed light on the integration with Microsoft's Power Platform as NAB's employee chatbot continues to evolve. You'll also have the opportunity to engage in a Q&A panel during the second half of this session. So feel free to drop your questions in the chat, or when it's time for our Q&A segment, raise your hand to engage with our panel. But first up, we'll be kicking off with Raj Ghuliani, NAB's Head of Technology for Workplace Support Services. So Raj, over to you.
Thank you, Prerita, and good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, wherever you're dialing in from. I'm dialing in from New Delhi today, from our NAB Innovation Center. So, and very warm welcome, and I'm very honored and privileged to be representing NAB and one of our digitalization journeys on the NAB bot. All right. So our chatbot journey started in 2021, where we were looking at common themes of our colleagues interacting with our support desks. And we were trying to identify those themes and learn from our colleague pain point workshops to understand what can we do to uplift their productivity so they can focus on servicing our customers more. We identified a lot of themes, and we knew that a chatbot was the right way to go to address some of those frequently asked questions and some of the requestable items that our colleagues were contacting our support desks. So we compared 4 different chatbots in 2021, and we looked at many things as part of that chatbot comparison, including some user interfaces. And key theme was that we want people to be able to use a desktop version and a mobile version that's easily available. Other than the user interface, we also looked at authentication on how we can easily authenticate a user as part of a bank and securing our services, but making sure that people have ease of authenticating to a chatbot, whichever one we implement. So we looked at Azure AD single sign-on as a perfect solution for that. Then we embarked the journey and deep dive further into, okay, as part of our common themes, what type of integrations would be required to be able to fulfill those common themes via the chatbot? And it became very clear that while we are using all the Microsoft services, Graph APIs, Office 365, Intune, that using a Microsoft product was the right way to go. We also looked at usability, including custom speech service, that it can be trained, multiple formats of text, and of course, natural language understanding. Scalability was another factor, ensuring that at any given time, we can meet the requirements depending on how many users, how many NAB colleagues contact us per minute. And we were satisfied that Lewis, as part of the bot framework, could handle up to 3,000 conversations per minute. And when we compared that to other chatbots at the time in 2021, we could see that other chatbots could only handle up to 600 conversations per minute. So that was another clear factor for choosing Microsoft's Azure bot framework. Another key element that we also focused on was security. While we don't have any confidential data being serviced by our chatbot, it's mostly FAQs and requestable items from our NAB colleagues, but we wanted to ensure that it was secure enough to meet all our obligations, including SOC 123 compliant in relevant services and native integrations for Intune policies applying single sign-on via Azure authentication and other Azure services in Australia rather than being managed by any other country. Then we looked at the cost as well as part of all those options that, and we started the POC using the bot framework, including Lewis, Q&A Maker, and as part of the key vault and search functions as well. The comparison was very straightforward. Instead of spending too much money and time and effort integrating bots to other systems and applications that we need to use, that Microsoft's bot framework was the key right one to go ahead with. So we partnered with our Microsoft partners and architects to start just a proof of concept work to see how the journey will go. As part of the journey, we implemented our POC in July 21. And as you can see, we implemented all those services: Lewis, Q&A Maker, bot framework, storage account, key vault, and search. This POC was rolled out to 1,000 people, or just over 1,000 people in our enterprise technology team, and some key selected business users that were customer facing to get their feedback as well. Based on the feedback in the journey, we implemented our NAB bot for all our 35,000 NAB colleagues in November 21. And since then, it's been used 57,000 times, and it's avoided nearly 57K calls to our support desk as well. While the trend line of volume proves itself, that's helped us reduce cost. But at the same time, with the interface being available on our Teams client on your desktop and also on your mobile Teams client, that we were able to empower our colleagues to be able to ask all the FAQs rather than having to find the answer or ask someone where to look for the answer first. And apologies. While we have, give me one sec. Okay, while we have just under 19,000 unique iterations that we have implemented, and this is fulfilling just under 800 use cases that have been implemented as well via the NavBot. These 800 odd use cases are the most common themes and most common questions and requests that were being questioned via our NavBot and also via our support desk. So that's why the uptake has been good so far. Very pleasing to see that just over 50% of the consumption of the NavBot was by our NAB customer-facing colleagues. And the reason that's pleasing is because we know our NAB customer-facing colleagues need to focus on servicing our customers rather than spending time with technology or any other support team. So they could do both in parallel. And the feedback given to us by those colleagues as we ask for feedback after every conversation via the NavBot, that's 4.4 average rating out of 5. And the response rate is just under 1 second as well. This is to show you a little bit about where we are at NAB and as our current state. And our colleagues have many multiple channels to connect with our support teams, including the on-call service desk via the IVR. Then we also have a live chat function where people can talk to our service desk 24/7 via live chat. NavBot is now also another mechanism servicing at least 800 unique use cases people can interact. We have an in-person tech lounge in our 8 head office locations in Australia. This is obviously available during business hours where people can go up and seek help for tech-related issues. And we also have a crowdsourcing channel on Workplace. We call it Chat to Tech, where people can ask questions and help each other out as well. That's also monitored by our service support teams to also give them direction and answer their questions and help them out. Exec tech support is also available for all our executive team. What we are planning on doing in the future as part of our target state is to ensure that NavBot aggregates and becomes the single point of truth and source where the NavBot will direct our team and our colleagues at NAB on what is the best possible solution, depending on the question they're asking, depending on the technology-related issue they might be facing. So NavBot will help them out. And we are implementing certain solutions via automation and scripting, including self-service capability, and the capability of NavBot being able to transfer the live chat to a live agent if a colleague at any given time wants to instead talk to a live agent. Crowdsourcing will continue to be available via Workplace, on-call phone support as well, and so would Tech Lounge. What this would do for NAB as overall would be as part of a single point source of truth. It gives us the option for NavBot to be able to also fulfill other elements and servicing queries related to human resources, property services, procurement, business support applications, or even compliance FAQs. All this information is available at many other different locations, whether on the intranet, whether on other policy pages, but for a colleague to be able to find those, it can take them a few minutes. What we are trying to achieve is save them that time, let NavBot give you the right answer. And as part of our NavBot journey, it will become a single entry point for all our colleagues as part of our vision for the future. We're also working on implementing voice support via the NavBot. While our current bot works via being able to type as part of natural language understanding and also via being able to click on the options and select through the menu on what you want to achieve out of it. Moving forward, our colleagues will be able to talk to the NavBot and give NavBot instructions or ask questions openly. And this gives our colleagues a seamless experience across all support channels. That's our vision, and that's what we would like to achieve in the future. I'll pause there and
Awesome. Thank
pass it
you,
back
Raj.
to you, Prerita.
Thanks, Raj. Really, really incredible to hear NAB's journey in implementing NavBot, as well as some of the learnings and observations that you've been able to share since deployment as well. It's now my pleasure to introduce the Microsoft ANZ team to take a few moments to dive a little bit deeper into the AI and Power Platform technology that Raj just touched on. We have Lewis Silva, Cloud Solution Architect for Data and AI, who will take us through our core Azure Artificial Intelligence services, and Ben Carrol, Sales Executive for Business Applications, who will take us through the next evolution of NAB's chatbot with the integration of Power Virtual Agents. Over to you both.
Thank you, Prerita.
Thanks, Prerita.
So we're going to take a few minutes first to talk about the overall Azure AI platform. So some of these services, as Raj described, they were used on the creation of this new NAB chatbot. And we're going to talk about the overall platform before drilling down into going back to Raj to ask him a few questions about the implementation. And if you have more questions, some questions already coming on the chat, just feel free to pop the questions in the chat, and we'll get through the questions through the panel session. So first, basics, what is artificial intelligence? So artificial intelligence is defined as the ability of computer systems to perform tasks that normally would require human intelligence. And what are the typical tasks that humans can perform well? We understand, for example, we can use our vision to see things that are around us or see things that are on a screen and understand what's in there, understand, recognize the objects, recognize shapes, recognize things. We can recognize speech, we can recognize, obviously, written text. So computer systems can actually be taught to learn about these abilities, and this is all about what AI is all about. So how companies adopt AI? So Raj described some scenarios where the chatbot is successfully used within an organization, in this case, to save a lot of cost in help desk calls. So typical scenarios, content search, for example, you can do knowledge mining, where you can connect AI to your backend systems and being able to allow users to do search on those systems. You can also do conversational AI. So for example, again, on NAB's scenario, you can have a chatbot where people can actually type in questions, and the chatbot's being able to understand it and guide them through the process to give them an answer to their question, right? So voice control, for example, you can understand a computer system can then understand speech commands and use those speech commands to perform a series of actions. And Raj mentioned as part of the vision for the bot, they want to implement potentially, voice automation. Business process automation is another key area that many companies use. For example, AI can do recognition of text from images. So you can do document process automation. You can compile, paper forms, scan those forms, and then pass into a system that can actually interpret what's in those forms and extract the key information, or basically textual information from those forms, and put it into a computer system that can then be leveraged by other systems. We can do machine translation, and we can see it every day when we log into a Teams call and we see the live captioning in there. That's real time, speech, transcription and translation. We can do document translation, and again, typical scenario, you can come, for example, on Teams on a chat window, and you can highlight a text from a conversation on the chat window, and you can tell Teams, I want to translate this to a different language, right? So all is all about using AI services to provide those automation. And then at the bottom is that sometimes you may have some scenarios that are very specific to your industry, right? So they require something that, it's probably not a typical, OCR or content search. I actually need to build like a proper model and feed the model with my own data so that I can teach the computer to do something. So a typical platform will also have the ability to allow you to build your own custom machine learning models, to build those models, train those models with your own data, and then deploy those models into a way that can then be used by other users in the organization. So how does translates into the Microsoft platform for AI? So at the bottom, we have the Azure Machine Learning Platform. So Machine Learning Platform is the core service that allows you to build models and train those models and deploy those models. So that is a very common scenario using by data scientists. You can go and build your models and train them to do things that are specialized, that are very relevant to you. But then what about other models that, other abilities that do not necessarily require a very customized approach. But for example, I mentioned OCR, right? When you have a screenshot and you want the ability to interpret text or extract text that may be on that screen, maybe on that image, sure, you can train a model to do that. But what if there's a model that is already pre-built that can already give that capability to you? The same thing with the speech recognition. Sure, you can train a model to be able to recognize language, for example, right? So you can read text and you can recognize, oh, actually, this is English or this is Spanish. But what if there's a model that already has that for you? So you basically don't reinvent the wheel. And again, going back to Raj's presentation, he mentioned how the ability to leverage these things, without having to build them from scratch was very key to enable NAB to build this chatbot, at a lower cost. So the key cognitive services, we basically have 4 areas. So the first one is language. So we have a translator, which, as the name implies, it allows you to translate across different languages. And we have one service that Raj mentioned, language understanding, or LUIS. So language understanding allows you to interpret commands that a user may provide to the service, and then being able to understand, okay, what is the intent of the user with that command. So a chat will usually use that so that when people type in a command, that chat will be able to interpret, okay, I think what the user meant is this, and I will associate this with perform a specific action. Q&A Maker is a service that you use to build a FAQ platform. So instead of building like a page with a very big FAQ, you can basically feed your FAQ into the Q&A Maker service, so that when users ask questions, the service will go and figure out, okay, what is the best from my knowledge base? What is the article? What is the piece of knowledge that I can use to solve that particular question that the user asks? And then we have text analytics. So text analytics have services, for example, key phrase extraction. So you can analyze, for example, a text and be able to extract what are the key terms that are present on that text. Or you can also, for example, analyze text and identify what is the sentiment of that particular text. So imagine, for example, if you're consuming Twitter feeds that refer to your company, are you unable to pass those feeds to a service that will interpret and figure out if the overall sentiment, for start, being able to check the key phrases and figure out, okay, this is what people are talking about about your company today. And also being able to understand, oh, actually the overall sentiment of what people are talking about your company today on Twitter is actually a positive, right? So again, it's all about the service. That service, those 3 services, LUIS, Q&A Maker, and Text Analytics, are now being merged in a new service called Azure Cognitive Service for Language. So Cognitive Service for Language is like the next iteration of those services that includes everything that those 3 services provide, but also some new capabilities like name entity recognition or conversational language understanding, which is like the next generation of LUIS. And it also includes a browser-based user interface called Language Studio that you can use it to basically test how these services interact with each other, how will they behave with your data, and how you can then integrate it in your applications. The next service is a set of services is vision. So vision, we have computer vision. So again, OCR, when you paste an image into one node and being able to extract the text that can be hidden on that image. Or doing image analysis, for example, being able to interpret images and being able to recognize objects on an image, right? Or being able to recognize the special relationships in a live feed. So for example, imagine a live feed and being able to tell what is the relationship between the objects on that live feed, like whether you are, for example, users coming too close to a security zone, for example. And you can also have a face APIs as well, which is all about recognition of faces and face expressions. And obviously in these times of COVID, you can also use the API to recognize, for example, if people on your live feed image are wearing a mask or not. The next set of services is the speech. Again, speech to text, like the way that Teams uses to to understand speech and translate it into text, or vice versa, text to speech and doing translation. And decision, where we have things like an anomaly detector, being able to take data from a time series and identify anomalies and so on. On top of cognitive services, we have built a series of services called Azure Applied AI Services. So Applied AI Services is basically a set of more high-level services that use cognitive services under the covers to provide a very specific functionalities. So cognitive search, for example, cognitive search is being able to do a search on, again, data repositories in your organization. But it uses cognitive services. So imagine, for example, if on your repositories, you also have a lot of images. So again, I can use the vision cognitive services to extract information about those images, extract information about, I don't know, objects on those images, and use that information to enrich an index that can then be used by the cognitive search service. So Form Recognizer, again, the ability of being able to recognize information into forms and extract that information and put it into something that a computer system will understand. And the bot service, I'm not going to go into in the detail to all of them, but the final one is the bot service. It was the one that also Raj mentioned and was one of the foundations to building the NAB chatbot, right? So the bot service, it allows you to build, effectively conversational bots. The interesting thing about the bot service is that it provides the plumbing required not only to work with the other cognitive services, the way Raj described that they use the bot service to call Lewis, for example, and understand what the user intent is. But the bot service also interacts with presentation layers. So you don't have to build from scratch a way to make your bot interact with Microsoft Teams, for example. So the bot service will do it for you. It will present a Microsoft Teams interface to your bot without you having to write it from scratch. And then on top of the AI services are more a set of more user-level services, which is what we call the Power Platform, and Ben is going to talk about those.
Great, thank you very much, Lewis. Good afternoon, good morning, good evening, everyone. My name is Ben Carrol. I'm the Business Applications Lead for Microsoft for Financial Services here in Victoria. And business applications in the context of today means the Power Platform, as Lewis has just referenced. And I really enjoy working in this space because I actually get to utilize all of the services and capabilities that Lewis has outlined in a SaaS offering at the application layer. And it comprises of 4 key components. One is Power BI, which is one of the world's leaders in data visualization toolsets. 2, which is Power Apps. It's a low-code, no-code approach to building out applications. 3 is Power Automate, which is one of the world's leading automation engines now, from simplistic automation through Office to Excel and PowerPoint, all the way through to complex attended and unattended RPA. And last but not least is Power Virtual Agents, which again is a low-code, no-code approach to building out virtual agents. Now, the reason as to why organizations utilize Power Virtual Agents is, simply put, it can reduce the time and effort needed to build and maintain bots by sometimes up to 80%. It also offers organizations, companies, the ability to be able to collaborate more effectively with business users, enabling them with tool sets to be able to get going on the process at hand, and then supported by pro developers and enabling them with some of the richness and the capabilities that Lewis has just outlined. And last but not least, you have the ability to be able to scale these bots across an organization, exactly as Raj has pointed out beforehand, across the likes of HR or legal or compliance or procurement or property services, and make sure that those bots have a consistent framework, consistent feel, so it's consistent across your entire organization. I'll wrap it up and hand it back over to yourself, Prerita.
Thanks, Lewis. Thanks, Ben. It's always amazing to see the integration between our workloads and services and the value of that holistic platform that we're able to bring to our customers. So thank you for taking us through that. To our audience, I hope you've been jotting down some of your questions, because now it's time for our Q&A panel with our amazing speakers. So feel free to drop your questions in the chat, or if you're brave enough today, raise your hand to engage with our panel, and our producers will work in the background to take you off mute. I know that just looking at the chat, we've got a couple of questions in there already. So we might kick off with those if that's okay with our panel. This
Right.
one is for Raj. How many staff are responsible for supporting and updating the NAB bot? That comes from David Kelly.
Thank you, David. We have 3 developers, an automation manager. They have been the critical and key part of the journey. We do have our solution architect and a PM who helps us from time to time. But keeping in mind, as a large enterprise, depending on how advanced your technologies, what supported and helped us was NAB's decision to embark on the cloud transformation journey. So initially, as part of the implementation, we also got some key support from our cloud professional services team, architects in the NAB workplace technology, security, and cloud security team as well. And not to forget and mention that the partnership working with Microsoft team and the Microsoft architects and the product owners helped us define the journey quite in advance that help those 3 developers and the automation manager to do what they're doing now.
Perfect. Thank you, Raj. There's another one in here from Ben about, is NABBot the final name for Go Live?
It was the name for Go Live, yes, but our plan is to allow our colleagues to choose a name for it in the future once it reaches a target state of being able to become that single point of contact and to be able to fulfill multiple services. That's the time we'll go out to our colleagues and ask them to give it a name, and yeah, we'll rename it then.
Awesome. While I scurry back through this chat and look at some of the other questions, Ben or Lewis, do you have any questions for Raj that's burning that you would like some answers to as well?
Look, absolutely, and there's actually a really good question online from Angel, I believe. How different is Power Virtual Agent implementation? Why wasn't it considered in the first place? And what are you looking to do with it going forward?
Sure. It was considered in the first place, but because of the journey we started as a POC, we were trying to do very low cost, low code implementation. And as highlighted by Ben and Lewis, we thought the bot framework was the easiest and quickest to deploy. And then while Virtual Agent was also getting the comprehensive advancement. So we have our plans to look at Virtual Agent as a skill bot. So the bot framework will be maintained as a master bot, and the virtual agents will be used as skill bots for multiple teams, including we are trying to do a POC via a physical bot called Misty that Microsoft have developed. And we'd like to see if we can utilize that for triaging purposes at a start for our face-to-face tech support, what we call our tech lounges.
Very good, Raj. I have a question myself. What would you say was the main obstacle that you faced when building the solution? Was it more a technical side, or was it more of a, I guess, of a cultural adoption issue?
It was more around timing, to be honest with you. And the reason I say timing, because while NAB was on the journey to transform and move to the cloud, we were looking at implementing a bot framework, and we needed support from our cloud professional services team, architects in workplace technology, and also from security and cloud security as well. And getting their time and also having support from our Microsoft partners, including yourself, Lewis, and also Ren Silva, who's your solution architect. So having all these key resources helped us save a lot of time. But if we were to find the key people to do this again, that would have taken us a lot longer.
Awesome. Thank you all for keeping the chat going. There's a few more questions that have come through. One from Karthik, who asks, if the organization is more development centric, what are all the options available in Power Apps, Automate, and Bot Apps perspective to convert as code, to maintain and source control management and manage these via DevSecOps?
So from a NAB perspective, we are on the journey to use Power Apps as well. We've implemented a few low-code apps for our different business streams, and that's supporting them and saving them a lot of time and effort to do things. But beyond that, I'll pass it on to Ben or Lewis to answer the remaining of the question as an overall.
Lewis, would you like to take that first? The DevSecOps piece. You there, Lewis?
Sorry, hello? My video froze.
Look, from a Power Platform perspective, what we're doing, working with NAB, is effectively supporting them and making sure that there is a very high level of governance and control frameworks placed around the actual Power Platform from start through to finish. And that also encompasses and entails Power Virtual Agents as part of that process. The control and center of excellence framework that has been rolled out, and we're supporting NAB through that process, adds strict level of rigor that follows the guardrail process that NAB has from an architectural standpoint and from a development standpoint as well. Lewis, would you like to add anything to that?
Yeah, so I think it's true that we can still integrate with with typical DevSecOps perspective, but the important thing is to keep in mind that Power Apps is more of a low code environment, right? So I guess it's all about what's the right fit for the organization. Like if you are more of a development centric, you'd probably be more comfortable using the cognitive services directly rather than using like a high-end interface like Power Virtual Agents. But you can have a bit of a combination of both. And actually, Raj mentioned that as part of the vision for enhancement of the bot, you can still have the dev-heavy aspect of building a bot using cognitive services, but at the same time, you can allow some users to explore some scenarios of their own using Power Virtual Agents.
Thank you all for that one. There's a few more in the chat. So Angel asks, 57K tickets avoided is quite impressive. So when it comes to sort of the adoption and uptake of the bot, did you have to do anything extra or anything out of the box, Raj, to actually help with that?
Nothing out of the box. It's more about repetitive comms and without being too empowering. And yes, we had to go through the regular channels of communicating to staff, but saying that we have plans to do that effective comms on a regular basis as part of the new colleagues and new people with different skill sets joining NAB family. So we want to ensure that they are also familiar with what the NAB bot can do. And that increases uptake even further, even reminds certain people who have not used the NAB bot for a while that it's still there and available for them, including new use cases that might be implemented.
Awesome. And do you have any plans to expand out the function to also operational processes and procedures for the bank itself? Another question from the chat.
It already has started doing it. So there's a application that customer-facing colleagues use, and there are certain FAQ process-related FAQs, I should say, that the bot is already covering and answering. We are going to enhance that further and include the option to cover many more topics. And I'll cover another question, which includes about ticketing tool. Yes, we are using ServiceNow as our ticketing tool, and also our knowledge repository and all our KB articles are on ServiceNow. And the bot is already integrated with ServiceNow and effectively helping colleagues be able to self-service following those articles. And that's the plan to continue doing that. And our live chat function is also in ServiceNow. So the bot, if at any time a user wants to talk to a live agent, it transfers the chat history and starts the live chat in ServiceNow.
Awesome. There's another question here, and it'd be good to get your thoughts on this as well. How well would the NAB bot fit in a smaller organization? So if we were to adapt this out to a smaller organization, say of less than 200 staff?
I think it can do a lot of good things for them. In fact, it may, depending on the 200 staff, you might face that you can get approvals a lot quicker and implement things a lot quicker. But I will highly recommend engage your Microsoft partner and solution architect. during your design phase, because that will define and save you a lot more time during the implementation and dev work.
Great one. This was one a little bit further up from the chat. So is it only technical or IT staff who can manage the Q&A catalog database, or can non-IT staff or subject matter experts also contribute to that?
Only our 3 developers and the automation manager have the guardrails and control to implement something, while they allow our colleagues from even non-tech team to focus on giving them a Q&A scenario and where the actual answers are. And we work with them very closely to allow them to guide us how they would like the questions to be answered, while we followed a theme of presenting the answers, if possible, in a quirky sense of humor, just so that the bot has a little bit of attitude to its own, rather than being dull or dry. But and we'll continue on that journey, but we'll try to empower our colleagues to be able to do as much as possible. And when it comes to deploying the code, we'll do it ourselves to ensure the consistency is maintained, and also that it's secure and it's following all the guardrails that a non-tech user might not know about.
Yeah, great stuff. There's another interesting question in the chat that I'd like to pose. If you were starting your journey today, but knowing what you already know and some of the learnings that you've had, what would you have done differently? Do you have any key learnings that you'd go back and implement to maybe make the transition smoother post-deployment? Would be interesting to hear your thoughts.
It will be going back during the POC phase and after implementing the POC and before we went live enterprise-wide. I would love to have the key people locked in a room for at least a few days and implement everything as soon as possible, and including our Microsoft partners, because I know finding time from the key resource can be a challenge in a large enterprise at many times. But other than that, I think even though all those people and colleagues in different teams, they really prioritized and helped us implement it, and I can't thank them enough.
Oh, I love that. There's another question from Charlie along sort of similar lines in terms of advice and learnings. What advice would you give other organizations wanting to leverage Azure Bot and any other sort of AI services as well? Are there any lessons learned that you could shed some light on there?
Look, at every organization, and including NAB, we know there's so much out there that people want answers to questions that are easily available on a SharePoint website, to an application, to a policy, to many other places. But as new employees or as existing employees, it's sometimes time-consuming to find the right answer, and you have to ask multiple people or multiple sources of truth. And my advice would be to define what your scope is very early, at least as a proof of concept point of view, and engage your Microsoft partner and solution architect to help you propose how that can be leveraged off via the bot framework easily, or the virtual agent, depending on each use case. I think the Microsoft partners can help build that quite comprehensively.
Awesome. And conscious of time, we're going to squeeze in one more if we can. So Shiva says some responses by the bot might become irrelevant over time. So fixes, or processes could change over time. So is there any analytics in place to see if the responses by the chatbot are yielding the expected outcome as well?
Absolutely. So on a daily, weekly basis, as part of our sprint cycles, we monitor the feedback being provided to us on the scale of 5. On top of that, we also look at how many handoffs happened as the chat was continuing. So we leverage off which chats did not get resolved and what had to happen. And as part of the handoff, what did the support person do that we can do it via the chatbot as well? So we continue to monitor that. We also look at the use cases that we have implemented. Are all of them being used, or are some of them in a list of not being used for 30 days by no one, for example? So we monitor that. So we look at prioritizing the ones that are common themes to pop up earlier and sooner. And as part of increasing those use cases as well, and talking to different teams, yes, we have integrated with ServiceNow and looking at knowledge articles. We've also done some leveraging of our Confluence pages, where a lot of our processes are for our technical teams on how to do things, rather than asking an engineer on how to do something and utilizing an engineer's time to coach someone and spend more time there. We can save all that time as well. So there's many things that we NAB as well want to empower further in the journey.
Love it, and right on time as well. So to our audience, thank you so much for joining us on our local connections spotlight session today. And to our wonderful speakers, to Raj, all the way from New Delhi dialed in today, to Ben and to Lewis, thank you so much for taking the time to chat to our lovely audience. Hope everyone really enjoyed the session and hope to catch you next time.